click the links you join the channel here over on Subscribe Stars. Let's take a look at these two articles about China and the Hollywood market machine. So Walt Disney Marvel is dealing with how to carefully tread water in the Chinese market, which means obviously don't criticize them in any way, shape, or form, or don't even be too pro-Americana, which, coming from Hollywood is not really an issue for them. So Disney is simping for China. Life in Commercial Zone America. Disney is not the Disney you might vaguely remember from the 80s or 90s. I mean, the short version of this is if there was ever a time to dip out of Hollywood, this is it. This is this. Ever since the 2016, they lost their mind with Trump derangement syndrome. But the 2020 summer of love, BLM, Soros, riots, you're never gonna. Hollywood is permanently changed from that, which sucks because Hollywood have some fun movies. I'm not a total pessimist. I can look back at some of the stuff they did and go, yeah, there was a lot of fun pop culture entertainment. Of course, they always had globalist subversion, but there was stuff that slipped through the cracks. I think back to the Star Wars trilogy that started in 1977. We got those movies and hundreds of others before and after, but they kind of slowed down after 1990. And then I think that the last great big films were probably Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, and that was 20 years ago. So that's a long time between something that is really sticks in the conscious. If kids are looking at modern Disney, and in their mind, this has to be the equivalent to movies from like 40 years older, well, there's no comparison. Movies in the pre-90s were head and shoulders above the modern stuff. Same with comics. I mean, it's shocking to compare and contrast the two things. Like just a comic run or movie run from, the 60s, 1965 to 1970, just that little period, compared to the past 5 years, you're like, oh, everything modern sucks. What happened? It seems like they had more fun back then. Like the further back you go, they had more and more fun, and things just kind of get worse and worse as we go into the future. At least more and more censorious, more and more politically correct. Like that makes for boring anything. That makes for a boring story, no matter if you tell it through a movie or a comic. When there's no willing suspension of disbelief, because even if something like Black Adam with The Rock. It's like, so it's set in the Middle East, and the bad guys are some British people who come in the Middle East, and doesn't make any sense, but that's the new face of Hollywood. Well, we couldn't make the bad people Middle Eastern people. Why not? Exactly. Why'd you have to make the British people instead of like making those other three groups that are running around causing harm? Why'd you make like British mercenaries or like secretly running the Middle East or something, as opposed to those other 3 or 4 groups that are running around pulling the strings? Because, yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is ridiculous, but it's like you compare that to the original Iron Man 2008, I think, with Robert Downey Jr., where like they were set in the Middle East and they were going up against Middle Eastern bad guys. It's like that's a pretty reasonable interpretation of what was actually going on at the time and what's still going on. It's like, yeah, that story has verisimilitude. That's what actually happens. These bad guys go in and they control, infrastructure and key nodes and infrastructure and nexus points of a town. It's like, so the difference between Iron Man 2008 and Black Adam of last year is the bad guys in the Middle East switch to guys with English accents. Like, that's ridiculous. Anyway, so you're just going to get more and more of that. That's just going to continue to accelerate, where you're going to, oh, hey, so a South Korean horror movie. Everyone in the movie is South Korean. Well, almost everyone. What's this blonde-haired, blue-eyed German guy doing here? Oh, he's the mad scientist in South Korea who is actually responsible for the bad MacGuffin guy. Oh, that's kind of weird. That kind of weird. Isn't that kind of... Anyone have raise their hands like, oh, so the one guy is actually the scientist in South Korea. He releases the chemicals that cause this mutation. It's like you didn't want to just... everyone else in the movie is South Korean. You didn't want to just include... oh, no, we can't portray a South Korean as a bad guy. We're Koreans. Okay, that seems a little bit on the nose, but whatever. So the John Cena video told you what you need to know. China acts as a unified market in a way that America can't, because China is a strong country run by Chinese. America as an economic zone country, the globalists said that America is just an idea, that the people don't matter. You could replace them with whoever, and the country would be fine because the Constitution is magic. And once you actually break down what they say, it's horrific. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. They seem to think things that are not in accord with reality, and yet nobody calls them out on it. And occasionally, I'll get into discussions with them on social media. And I saw one discussion where someone was saying, like, so if you replace all the Japanese or the Swedish with some other group, and you talk to these little globalist kids, and you tell them, like, so that would be fine with you. It's like it would be the same place. Like, what's the difference? You're not a bigot, are you? It's like, I don't. We're not even on the same page, and I think this is to the extent, like, we would be better off separating if you really have these worldviews, and you think like Japan would be Japanese if you replace the Japanese with some other group. So Disney was always simping for China. Almost all of Hollywood does. If you want to sell in the Chinese market, then you can't portray any aspect of China in a negative light. I've got an image of the Tiananmen Square thing and the tank, right? It's like, yeah, you're probably not going to hear that story told. Didn't Richard Gere do a movie in the 80s or 90s about China? But that was before the market was really opened up. Anyways, I made credit to him and whatever company did that. So the Indiana Jones 5 movie, for example, couldn't have a theme of fighting Chinese communist spies or China like at any point in history. So instead, they're fighting Germans again. They're fighting them in the indie universe for the third time. It's ridiculous, but Hollywood won't go after the Bolsheviks or Russians or communism in general because Hollywood are the communists, and they can't go after China anyway, and they hate Europeans with just a genocidal, incandescent rage, so they keep going after the Germans. It makes for some very stupid. It's also tiresome. It's just so effing dumb when every movie. So hey, the blonde guys in the first 10 minutes of the movie, you found some blonde guys. I had to go back and watch the original Avatar, right, to go watch Avatar Part 2. And in the original Avatar, it's a blonde guy in a bar who's slapping around a woman. Think, oh, this has been going on for a long time, hasn't it? And the further back you look in Hollywood history, you go, oh, dear God, this has really been going on for a long time. Anyway, I mean, it kills the willing suspension of disbelief or similitude. It's like every bag. I mean, once you notice it, you never unnotice it. You put on the glasses, and you're like, oh shit, I can't take the glasses off. It's a one-way trip down that rabbit hole into the matrix. So I look at the totality of the Hollywood machine, and they're not going to turn this around. This is who they are. They are absolutely on board with this. There's my girl, Rachel, whatever her name is. There are no companies that will tell China to go F off because under globalism, you can't. You're controlled by global markets, either directly or indirectly. So essentially, you're a slave to the biggest market, in this case, China. If America ticks off China, suddenly America will have to bring manufacturing back to America. And oh, wait a minute. The globalists don't want that for some reason. When countries are more independent, they're free to be themselves and not be slaves to market forces. Oh no, Pornhub, the streaming video services and fast food canceled Russia, a year ago. They don't care. They can pirate the digital stuff and they can cook their own food. They have oil. They don't give two shits about whatever Europe and the Americans do. Anyway, one of the reasons China had issue, and it's probably getting pretty cold in Europe right about now. One of the issues, we're owning Russia by freezing to death. Congratulations. One of the reasons China had issues with Marvel was because there was an Epic Times newspaper kiosk in the background, and I think they're a Christian paper, and there's something to do with Falun Gong or something. So basically, Hollywood is in the position of having to ignore the Chinese human rights abuses and atrocities of China because it's a market and the American audience is apparently fine with it. But, they're also fine with ignoring Weinstein and Woody Allen and Siegler and I think he was the Foot guy and, the Epstein Island flight logs and the atrocities that are going on in Hollywood. Like, they're just fine ignoring all of that kind of stuff. And the American audience is also apparently fine with ignoring it. And China can just get worse and worse because Hollywood will never stand up to them because Hollywood doesn't care. If anything, they admire the brutal totalitarianism. Like they're taking notes on how China behaves. The left loves Hollywood, and then when they censor films for China and the Middle East for the BLT type of kissing scenes in the background, like, yeah, we put that in the background so we can just zip, edit that little bit out for the Chinese and the Middle Eastern markets. And Americans are like, so can we get that version? What are you, bigot? Wait, so are the billions in China and the Middle East, are they bigots? No, no, it's just their culture. Well, it's my culture too. I want the edited version. Oh, you're still a bigot. Yeah, that's how it works. The left loves Hollywood, but then when they censor this stuff, they don't say a word or boycott the companies because hey, they love the bread and circuses also, and they mostly think mostly China is a anti-white misandrist, or China Hollywood's anti-white misandrist propaganda company, so industry. So the left wing is broadly on board with it because they know they're spreading this type of hatred. So even though they have to ignore the Chinese atrocities, as long as they're going after people of European descent and dehumanizing and degrading them, which is what Hollywood is for, then the left wing is broadly on board with it. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next episode.